On the night of September 26, 1983, the world came within minutes of ending. Not because of a decision made by a president, not because of a military commander giving an order, not because of a missile launched in anger, but because of a computer error in a Soviet bunker outside Moscow, and one man who had exactly 10 minutes to decide whether to trust a machine or trust his own instincts. If he made the wrong call, the Soviet Union would launch a full nuclear counterattack against the United States. The Americans would respond in kind. Within hours, according to estimates made later by Stanford researchers, roughly 100 million people would be dead. Within months, the death toll could reach 1 billion. The world as we knew it would cease to exist. His name was Stanislav Petrov. He was 44 years old. He was working the night shift. And almost nobody on Earth knew his name until 15 years after it happened. To understand how close everything came to ending that night, you have to understand what 1983 felt like from inside the Soviet Union. Because 1983 was not a normal year in the Cold War. It was arguably the most dangerous year since the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962. And in some ways, it was even more terrifying, because the tension had been building for months with no single dramatic event to focus it, just a slow, suffocating accumulation of fear and suspicion on both sides. President Ronald Reagan had spent the year delivering speeches that the Soviets interpreted as preparation for war. In March, he called the Soviet Union an evil empire. Not diplomatic language, not the careful phrasing of détente, but a direct moral condemnation that sent a clear message about how the American president saw the conflict. Then he announced the Strategic Defense Initiative, a program to build weapons in space capable of shooting down incoming Soviet missiles. From Moscow's perspective, this looked like America preparing to neutralize their nuclear deterrent, which would only make sense if America was planning to strike first. The Soviet military intelligence apparatus, the GRU, had launched a secret program called Ryan, an acronym for nuclear missile attack, specifically designed to detect signs that the Americans were preparing a first strike. Soviet agents around the world were instructed to watch for indicators: unusual activity at American military bases, lights burning late in government buildings, unusual blood bank activity that might suggest preparations for mass casualties. The Soviet leadership was genuinely, deeply convinced that the Americans might attack without warning. The paranoia was not performance, it was real. And then, 3 weeks before the night that would change everything, a Soviet jet fighter shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, a civilian passenger aircraft that had strayed into Soviet airspace. 269 people died. The international condemnation was immediate and overwhelming. Reagan called it a massacre. The relationship between the two superpowers hit its lowest point in decades. Soviet military commanders were on the highest alert they had been in years. Everyone was watching, everyone was waiting, everyone was afraid. It was into this atmosphere, this specific moment of maximum tension and minimum trust, that Stanislav Petrov walked into a bunker outside Moscow on the evening of September 26th and took his seat for a 12-hour shift. Stanislav Petrov was not a typical Soviet military officer. He had been trained as an engineer, not a soldier, and he thought like one, analytically, skeptically, with a deep respect for what systems could and couldn't do. He had worked for years with the OCO Early Warning Satellite Network, which was designed to detect the heat signatures of American intercontinental ballistic missiles at the moment of launch. He understood the system intimately. He also understood its flaws. The OCO system was relatively new. It had been tested extensively, but never in real-world conditions. Petrov had concerns about its reliability, concerns he had expressed to his superiors, and that had been noted and largely ignored. He was good at his job, thorough and precise, and he was known among his colleagues as someone who thought carefully before acting. If any person in the Soviet military was suited for what was about to happen, it was him. He later said that he had never imagined he would actually face this situation. It was the kind of scenario you trained for, ran drills for, thought about in the abstract. You didn't actually expect it to happen on a Tuesday night while everyone else in the world was asleep. Shortly after midnight, the sirens began. A wall panel across the room lit up with a single word in large red letters: launch. The OCO system was reporting that one American intercontinental ballistic missile had been launched from Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana and was heading toward the Soviet Union. The computer was declaring high reliability. This was not a drill. This was not a test. The system was telling Petrov, with complete confidence, that the United States had just fired a nuclear weapon at his country. Petrov had 10 minutes. That was how long it would take for the missile to reach Soviet territory. 10 minutes to decide whether to pick up the phone and report an incoming American nuclear attack to his superiors, which would trigger the Soviet launch-on-warning protocol, meaning an immediate, massive nuclear counterattack against the United States, or to report it as a false alarm and take personal responsibility for that decision in front of the most powerful military hierarchy in the world. If he reported it as an attack and he was wrong, nothing happened except he looked like an idiot. If he reported it as a false alarm and he was wrong, if there really was an American missile in the air, the Soviet Union would be hit with a nuclear warhead while he sat there doing nothing. He would have failed to protect his country at the moment it needed him most. Then the system updated. Now it was showing not one missile, but 5. 5 American ICBMs in the air, all headed toward the Soviet Union. The room was in chaos. Officers around him were shouting. The alarm was deafening. Every screen, every indicator, every automated system in the bunker was screaming the same message. America has attacked. Petrov sat very still and thought. Something wasn't right. He had been briefed, over and over throughout his career, that an American first strike would be massive. Hundreds of missiles launched simultaneously to overwhelm Soviet defenses and destroy their ability to retaliate before they could respond. That was the logic of nuclear war. You didn't start it with 5 missiles. 5 missiles didn't make sense as an opening move. 5 missiles was almost designed to invite retaliation without actually doing enough damage to prevent it. The ground radar installations, which searched for missiles rising above the horizon, were showing nothing. No corroboration. Just the satellite system, screaming on its own. Petrov later said he was never certain. He did not know for sure that the alarm was false. He made a judgment, an educated, analytical judgment based on everything he knew about how nuclear war actually worked, and he acted on it. He picked up the phone. He told his superiors it was a false alarm. Then he waited. The next several minutes were the longest of his life. He sat in the bunker, surrounded by screaming alarms and panicking colleagues, and waited to find out if he had just made the most catastrophic mistake in human history. Every second that passed without an explosion somewhere was a second of evidence that he might be right. Every second was also a second in which, if he was wrong, it was already too late to do anything about it. No missiles arrived. The alarms kept sounding, and then, gradually, they stopped. The system updated again. The launches had not been confirmed by ground radar. The OCO satellite network had malfunctioned. What it had detected was not American missiles. It was sunlight, a rare and precise alignment of sunlight reflecting off high-altitude clouds in a way that the satellite sensors had interpreted as the heat signature of missile launches. An extraordinary cosmic coincidence had nearly ended civilization. The Soviet early warning system, the most sophisticated detection network the communist world had ever built, had been fooled by the sun. Petrov was right. There were no missiles. The world was still there. He sat down, and by his own account, his legs gave out. He had been standing the entire time without realizing it. What happened to Stanislav Petrov after he saved the world is one of the most remarkable and quietly devastating parts of the story. He was not celebrated. He was not promoted. He was not given a medal or a ceremony or a moment of public recognition. Instead, he was subjected to intense questioning by his superiors about his actions that night. Not questioning designed to understand what he had done right, but questioning designed to establish whether he had done anything wrong. The incident was deeply embarrassing to the Soviet military. It exposed a catastrophic flaw in their most important defense system, a system that had cost enormous resources and was the pride of their nuclear defense apparatus. If Petrov had been officially rewarded for his actions, it would have meant officially acknowledging that the system had nearly triggered a nuclear war by accident. The scientists and generals who had built and approved the system would have had to answer for it, so they buried it. Petrov was reprimanded, not for making the wrong call, but for failing to fill out his paperwork correctly during the incident. He had been so focused on the crisis that he had not properly documented everything in the military diary in real time. That was the official finding. A paperwork violation. He was reassigned to a less sensitive post and eventually took early retirement. He went home to a small apartment outside Moscow and told almost nobody what had happened. His wife of many years didn't know the story for a decade. The incident was classified and remained unknown to the outside world until 1998, when a retired Soviet general who had been present that night mentioned it in his memoirs. When journalists tracked Petrov down and told him that the world now knew what he had done, he seemed genuinely uncomfortable with the attention. He gave interviews. He traveled to New York and received awards. He met with United Nations officials who called him one of the most important human beings of the 20th century. Former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon said that it was hard to imagine anything more devastating for humanity than all-out nuclear war between the United States and Russia, and that this might have occurred were it not for the wise decision of Stanislav Petrov. Petrov's response to all of this was typically understated. When asked if he considered himself a hero, he said he didn't. He said he was simply doing his job. He said he was the right person at the right time. He said that his colleagues, professional soldiers trained to follow orders, would have reported the launch if they had been sitting in his chair that night. He was probably right about that. Stanislav Petrov died in May 2017 at the age of 77, in his small apartment in the Moscow suburbs. His death was barely noted at the time. A family friend announced it months later, and it spread quietly through the news cycle before disappearing. The man who saved the world died in the same anonymity in which he had lived it. There is a detail about that night that stays with you long after you've heard the story. When Petrov was later asked what made him trust his instincts over the machine, what made him willing to stake everything, including his career and his freedom, on the belief that the most sophisticated early warning system ever built was wrong, he said something that is as simple and as profound as anything said during the entire Cold War. He said the system was new. He said he didn't fully trust it yet. He said that a real American attack would have involved hundreds of missiles, not 5. And he said that he had been told his entire career that the Americans would strike hard and fast and overwhelming if they struck at all. Because that was the only way it made sense militarily. Because America, if it ever decided to act, would not hesitate. He trusted American logic more than he trusted his own system. And that trust, that specific understanding of how America thought and operated and fought, is what saved the world on a Tuesday night in 1983. This is Declassified Vault. A new file opens every week. Subscribe, because the next story is already waiting.